in your first week, how much you actually do in cash collected again?
In our first week, I did 15.5K in cash collected, which I was really shocked with. My goal was to pay my rent through remote closing. My rent is $1,400. So I knocked that out in the first week, and my goal was to do that in a month.
So Rizwan, what's your story, bro?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I basically, the story is my name is Riz from Chicago. Just graduated college back in May. Have been kind of in the online entrepreneur space since high school. I got my feet wet back when I was like 16, starting making like ad creatives for random businesses I would find on Instagram. And through making Facebook ads for these guys, I realized they were all running dropshipping stores. And I asked them, like how much money were my ads making them? And once I saw, their dashboards, I was like, why am I not dropshipping? I should be doing that instead of, being the guy making the ad creative. So I started out dropshipping. I did that for a couple of years. My most successful brand was this blue light glasses store that did pretty well, especially over COVID. I got lucky and had really good timing, so things just really took off for me. That ended up dying down naturally. At the same time, I also was heading to college. Uh, because of COVID, my first year at college was my sophomore year. So it was my first time on campus. I was busy meeting new people, running around, enjoying being a college student. So kind of took my foot off the gas there. The dropshipping money, the well ran out, so to speak. And I was kind of, just doing odd jobs here and there, picking up some more graphic design work and really trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And so I started getting more into TikTok over COVID. I started posting there. Tried to get into content creation. I actually grew my own TikTok to 50,000 followers. Again, that was kind of like a lucky type of COVID thing. The account is pretty much dead now, but it taught me a lot. I gained a lot of skills from doing that in content creation and editing. And I used that skill to start basically making TikTok videos and reels for other business owners. And so once again, I took something that I learned and applied it to a business setting and started making TikToks and reels and content, basically being a social media marketing agency for other businesses in Chicago, and then also, some places around the country as well. So I've kind of, touched a bunch of different spheres. I've done drop shipping, I've done an agency. None of them really ever stuck with me. I saw a little bit of success, but they were never consistent, and I couldn't support myself off of them. So post college, things were winding down, and I still was kind of all over the place, and I knew I wanted to go into sales. I realized that through my passion for entrepreneurship and also meeting other like-minded people at Loyola where I went to school. And so through learning sales, I got a job after school. I just graduated in May, like I said, and started doing well there and started looking for opportunities on the side to kind of supplement my income. And that's kind of how I got into the high ticket closing space, remote closing space, whatever the kids are calling it these days.
Mhm.
And that's, kind of where I realized I actually need to get much better at this because high ticket closing and remote closing is much different than, corporate sales being an SDR, a BDR, an AE. And I kind of thought I was hot shit. And I realized through, stumbling across Sean's videos that I had a lot to learn. I really resonated with the things that he would share and the advice and insight he would give. And that's when I reached out to him and he kind of told me about what he had to offer. And now, a couple months later, we're here and doing a case study.
100%, 100%. Yeah, tell us more about like the whole SDR thing. You're an SDR right now, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So walk me through that because you're doing the SDR stuff. You're also doing this like this closing, the remote closing stuff. Like, how different is that? And yeah.
Yeah. So being an SDR, for people who don't know, is a sales development representative, or it's also called a BDR, which is a business development representative. If you're a post grad trying to break into tech sales, that's typically the entry level role that you're going to be looking for. As an SDR and a BDR, it's basically the same thing as appointment setting. If you're in the online high ticket space, you essentially are building a book of business for the AEs at your company. You're either cold calling or just making warm introductions and trying to get people in the door, booking a meeting with them on behalf of an AE or a closer that can actually, win new business. So as an SDR right now, I am cold calling businesses and basically booking meetings with someone on my team. And then from there, they're the ones who go and close the deal. So that's what's happening in a corporate setting. As a closer now, I'm the one actually closing the deals, winning new business. And that's different because here, it's a full sales cycle where I'm actually, you know, having the lead come in, I'm qualifying them, and then I'm also the one closing them. Whereas the SDR or a BDR, you're basically just qualifying them, making sure it's a good prospect, and then handing it off.
100%, 100%. What would you say, like, I guess the future looks like, you know? Actually, I guess first off, before we even jump into all that stuff, let's walk through your results so far because, you know, it's been a few months. You went from being an SDR. You told me you were, you know, the top, like, you were the top rep there as well, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and then now it's like a few months later, you like these past few months just been kind of trying to find a role. We tried to get you a place as a setter, but luckily
Hmm.
something popped up and you were actually able to land your first gig as a like an actual closer, which is insane. So like it's I mean for at least from what I've seen, it's very rare that people start off as closers, but you did and you ended up doing pretty well. So I guess
Had a
in
good
your
coach.
first 100% for sure. I mean, great student as well. So, in your first, if your first week, how much you actually do in cash collected again?
Yeah. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Let me pull it up here. So
Mhm.
in our first week, I did 15.5K in cash collected, which, I was really shocked with. To be honest, I thought, I would be happy closing a couple deals, but it's a really strong offer. So I was really excited about that. Uh, and yeah.
100%, 100%. If you don't mind, like I guess sharing with everybody who's watching, do you
Mhm.
mind pulling up the actual dashboard so they can actually see the proof?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, so this
Yeah.
looks like what? So the very first one looks like it was like for 500 bucks. Um,
This actually was the only one that's not me.
oh, that was the only one that's not you. I see. Okay, so
Yeah,
basically, your very first close was paid in full.
correct.
What a way to start. Okay,
Hmm.
so paid in full, paid in full. And I mean, how much is that? That's five, six, eight, something like almost 20K, something like that, right? Very nice, very nice. And then I guess what's your actual closing rate if you've calculated? You don't have to give like the exact number, but something close.
60%.
60%. Very good. So yeah, I mean, for everybody that's watching, like this is the power of just like, you know, working really hard and pair it with a really good offer, you know? You will like genuinely you'll get like crazy high close rates. You'll get it's just insane what happens, you know? Because you have to understand it's a lot of people see sales as like for example car sales or like the whole corporate world of sales where it's like cold audience. You're just competing on price, like super scammy, super sketchy, you know. But when you jump into this whole world of like remote sales, right, especially the better offers, you're not selling to a cold audience. You're actually selling to a very warm audience that really loves what you're selling. All you really have to do is just you kind of have to put a little. You have to be very strategic in the way you put pressure on them. And then answer a few questions, and that's pretty much the whole process. You know, it sounds obviously sounds super easy. It's not. But yeah, I mean, walk me through, I guess, like what your initial expectations were going into this whole industry, and like, I guess, what were the main things you learned? You know, like what kind of broke your expectations?
100%. So, I mean, I think you can speak to this pretty well about me, but starting out, I was really, almost anxious about like knowing exactly the right thing to say and when, and wanting to have the perfect script ready to go. We were practicing for, one of the offers I was looking at earlier on when we started working together. And I was very obsessive over every phrase, every sentence. And while those things like tonality and cadence and phrasing are important, I was getting way too caught up in the details, and basically shooting myself in the foot because anytime a prospect said something, I would want to reply with something in the script. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, I mean, you just got to be good on your feet. And so
100%.
one of the things that you kind of help me work through is the whole point of the conversation is finding out what issue they have and solving it for them. And that's basically, it. And if you can have that and make them come to a realization on their own, perfect. If they need a little bit of a boost, no problem. You can take care of that. But that's basically the crux of, any conversation. Before, I was really worried and, you know, didn't think I would have the conviction in order to, name drop the price, and really get people to, move forward. But like I said, when you have conviction paired with a good offer and you're really able to hone in on the prospect's pain points, and more importantly, that you can actually help them, I mean, it makes it a seamless experience.
100%, 100%. I think that's what a lot of salespeople like entering this industry get wrong. They have a complete misconception of what this whole thing's about. You know, they see a script. It's almost like, do you remember in high school where we take tests and like, it was those tests where it's just solely off memory. You remember those history tests where it's like what war occurred in like 1877? You have to like answer the exact one. You just memorize it, right? Like when they get into sales, they try to memorize a script, and they almost approach the script the same as they would actually approach that history test, and it's just not how you do it at all. Like the script is just kind of like I would call it a sort of like general guideline of what's important to ask, but everything else, the better of a salesman you are, the better you are at understanding like what to actually ask, what answers you want, and just basically come up with what to say on your feet. So I think you've done a very good job with that, and I love how like adaptable you've been this entire process. Because if you compare the very first sales call you had to like now, massive difference, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, I think part of it is like you said, just having more being more relaxed, and another important thing too is just having industry knowledge, which I'm starting to get better at as well. One of the things that you taught me is basically getting those soft yeses throughout the call, and basically, just helping them out throughout the conversation. That way, when you make the big ask of whether or not they want to move forward with the program, it's comfortable for them to say
100%.
yes, and there's not friction there, right? And so that's one of the things that I learned early on is that you can only do that if you have knowledge of, an in-depth knowledge of the niche that you're in, what your offer is, how it's being positioned, because you need to be able to speak to that and their pain points. If you're selling, I don't know, a fitness offer and you don't know the first thing about being healthy, right? I mean, you're going to have a hard time convincing the person you're talking to that the program is going to be a right fit for them.
100%.
And so by having knowledge of the industry and studying that and really studying your prospect, your consumers, you can really speak to them in a way that makes them feel understood and makes, the process of moving them forward frictionless.
Absolutely. Would you say sales is about helping people?
Unequivocally.
Unequivocally, right? I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. They see the Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street movie. They think, oh my, sales is being able to convince anyone into doing anything. And the reality
Right.
is just that's what we call scamming. You know, like
Hmm.
if you want to sell someone a fitness program and you're fat as shit, you don't know the first thing about fitness, it doesn't make sense, you know?
Right.
So exactly what you just said is 100% true. But when it comes to you, right,
And
I
to your
guess like,
point,
mhm,
and to your point, some people don't know that they need the help also. Maybe subconsciously, that's why they take the call, they take the conversation. Oh, what brought you here today? Oh, I don't know. That's when it's your job as a salesperson to start peeling back those layers and seeing what we can actually help you with. Because then a lot of people will be like, oh, no, I don't have anything. I don't have any issues. You're here for a reason. And so it's your job as a salesperson and a closer to hone in on their pain points, peel back the layers, and see, what you can actually help them with. And guess what? If you can't help them with anything, that's when you disqualify them. That's what disqualifying a lead is. We're not in the business of, selling this to everyone because otherwise it's a bad product.
exactly. That's there's no better way to put it. So 100%. But for you, I guess, what would you say is like your next goal? You know, when it comes to sales, what was your goal going into this? I know it hasn't been too long in remote sales, but what was your goal going into this? Have you hit that? And what is your next goal moving forward?
My goal, Sean, was to pay my rent through remote closing. My rent is $1,400. And so I knocked that out in the first week, and my goal was to do that in a month. So I think I gotta raise the bar a little bit higher. I think my next goal would be to hit a 10K month for myself. That would be really, really cool. I don't know, again, depending on the offer and the pipeline coming in, I don't know if that's going to be, consistent, but my first goal is to just get to that first 10K month as fast as possible.
100%. I think you're well on your way there. There's definitely a chance you hit that this month. There's definitely a chance. But I mean, the position you're in, there's going to be a lot of volatility. Some months you're going to make a lot. Some months you're not going to make, as much. But I think the long-term potential of this offer is really just what outweighs anything. And if for anybody watching, Riz is on like a very new offer. So basically, he's helping them from the ground up. So, like a lot of potential here. So, 100%. Um, I guess also, um, I want to know more about your whole experience as an SDR. Do you think that's helped you at all when it comes to like, I guess, working as a closer?
It totally has. I think it totally has. And actually, the two roles play off of each other nicely. I think I told you this when we first started talking. The SDR and the experience you gain with that is really beneficial towards closing because when you're booking meetings, whether you're an appointment setter or an SDR, you're doing mini closes all day long. Asking for a meeting and getting the prospect to agree to that is an ask, and getting them to agree to that is a close in its own right. And a lot of people don't realize that. Or if they do, they sell themselves short, especially in like an enterprise level setting. Getting a close could be a close for a meeting could be millions of dollars on the table for a company because all it takes is one meeting to change the trajectory of things, especially at that level. So meetings are not, should not be discredited at all. As an SDR and just making dials every day, you kind of learn how to manage your tone, how to address people, make them feel comfortable, and disarm them right off the bat. And it's funny too because in a setting like an SDR, you're going to be making a lot of cold calls. So as soon as you pick up, you need to disarm the prospect as fast as possible. And people again think that, is like trying to freak them out or, keep them on the phone. It's not. It's just, hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything right now. I'm just trying to gauge, if this is something that could actually help you. So that mindset and that mentality really helped me with closing. Um, Basically, also being able to strategize too. Before I would make a call as an SDR, I still do. You have some info, you can kind of check out their LinkedIn, check out their business, see what they're up to, and based on what you're seeing, kind of create a strategy. And that's, something that just recently you started advising me more on is like as you're talking to the prospect, you should be creating a strategy in your head. So that was a really useful thing that I've picked up as well.
100%. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I was also something of like an SDR, like an appointment setter before I went to all this like remote closing world, and it helps you in a lot. Like sure, like it's setting, quote unquote, it's not closing, but there's a lot of parallels that are there that definitely help you. So 100%. Um,
Also,
mhm.
it's worth mentioning that as an SDR, you're constantly doing follow up. A lot of my deals that have closed in this first week, where we've done 15.5K in cash collected, at least like four or five of them were not closed on the call. Actually, they were
True,
closed in the follow up.
true.
Don't think I would have been able to do that as effectively if I didn't have my background as an SDR.
100%. I mean, it's like follow up is a thing that's like you would think it's obvious for everyone to do, but you'd be surprised by how many salespeople don't do it. You know?
Don't do it or
Um,
don't do it correctly, right?
exactly. 100%. 100%. So I think for the future, what we're going to work on is obviously closing more on the same call. But
Hmm.
I think the fact that you've obviously been able to follow up so well is why you've reached this level of success so fast. You know? Um, but I guess another question, I guess, like how is it, I guess, to do sales by, I guess first off, like how would you describe the mentorship to somebody that's not in it?
Yeah. I think, the mentorship is a great way to pay down your ignorance, right? When I first started out with this, I thought, I'm already well ahead of the average person. I'm already an SDR. Like, I know sales, right? Like, how hard this could be. Turns out I didn't know jack shit. Um, there was a lot to learn, especially on managing with prospects and dealing with objection handling, which is funny because you and me just had this conversation where you're like, Riz, you shouldn't even be worrying about objection handling right now. Right now, you need to worry about nailing, communicating clearly with the prospect. And so it's funny because in all these YouTube videos and TikToks on remote closing and high ticket appointment setting and whatever other bullshit, they're all like, oh, my secret objection handling tactics, how to handle any objection and whisk it away. you can avoid objections if you actually clearly deliver the value of the offer and you solve their pain points. Because if that's true, there won't be any objections, right?
Exactly.
And obviously things come up, but you should be trying to avoid objections in the first place. And that's one of the things that we're focusing on right now. So that's something, I went into high ticket sales being like, oh, how to handle the I need to think about it objection, and oh, I need to talk to my wife objection, or I don't have the budget objection. None of them really matter because if these people had enough conviction and faith in you and the offer, then it wouldn't be an issue. So that's something, an insight that I would have never ever realized on my own that, you kind of guided me through, which was super valuable.
Mhm.
Another thing too, and this is just more of like a logistical thing, is that when we started, I thought like, okay, I'll be checking in with him like once a week, twice a week, and kind of, reviewing our calls. But you've been super great about being responsive, like in between them, like over text. You'll like dump voice memos to me all the time, which I appreciate a lot.
Mhm.
And it'll be funny because, I'll like see a voice memo from Sean and be like, okay, and just like hold it here and like listen as I like watch, my videos and stuff. So it's very hands on, and the feedback that you get is practically live, which I appreciate, and it allows you to make those fixes super quickly and implement them kind of into your process.
100%. I think that's something you've done very well as well. Like, it's one thing, and this is just to speak to everybody out there who's thinking about getting into sales or getting into business in general. It's like, it's one thing to buy a mentorship and get help. It's another thing to actually execute. Now, I think one of the things you've done very well is like basically everything I tell you to do, you do it. And like, I actually see it on the sales calls. Sometimes it's obviously like it could be done better. That's the whole point of a mentorship. But it's like you're actually like actively trying, which you'd be so surprised, but it's like nobody does that, you know? So props to you. Like that's the reason why, obviously you've been so successful so far and you're going to continue to be successful. So that's amazing. What would be your advice, I guess, to like a complete beginner who's kind of debating between trying to, get into remote sales on their own, and maybe jumping into a mentorship, but they're not too sure because maybe they don't have too much money to spend.
Yeah. So first part of your question, I think, what would you tell to someone just wanting to get into high ticket sales? I think that basically is going to be really refining your skill of communicating clearly and effectively. One of the things that I feel like already predispositioned me to be successful is I've had a decent amount of experience in public speaking. I was involved in an assortment of activities throughout high school and college where I was in leadership positions and always talking to people. One of the most valuable skill sets in closing is being able to talk clearly, effectively, and also succinctly, right? So that
Mhm.
means being efficient with your words and what you're saying. It's very easy to word vomit to people and kind of drown them in jargon and nonsense. But if you can clearly communicate to them in as few words as possible while still being impactful, I mean, that's when you can really get people to resonate with you and also just keep up at the pace you're moving at. So, I mean,
And
first and
quick note,
foremost,
I don't mean to cut you
yeah.
out, but like I just want to make a quick note because this is also another thing I touched on. I remember like when we first started, you remember that script that we started reading? And I think I told you like you're very well spoken, but that doesn't mean you're going to be good at sales, you know?
Right.
And I think like you've been, and another thing, it's like you've been able to refine this so much to the point where it's like in the beginning, I got the feeling, like honestly, I got the impression that you'd like to hear yourself talk. You would talk a lot and you kind of ramble on. And now it's like it's much more refined, you know? And it's the example I like to give to a lot of people is like a lot of people are able to talk a lot and they get the impression that they're going to be fine, they're going to be talented in sales. It's a breeze. But like for these people, what they don't realize is just sales is not about talking more, you know? And the perfect example is like the kids who would breeze by in class presentations. Like you were one of them. We talked about this. I was one of them
Mm-hmm.
as well. We were never fucking prepared. We would look around, see all those kids like just preparing, stressing, being super nervous.
Sweating. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we would just jump on there. Yeah, like this is like this, and we would basically carry the entire presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. It's obviously an amazing ability to have, but that's not sales, you know? And yeah. So I guess what would you say to that person who's just a great yapper, but but they have no clue how to do sales?
humble yourself, man. I mean, that's what I needed to do. My ego was here. And again, I'm not like a super egotistical person, but specifically about this, I was like I'm chilling, right? I never stress about this stuff. I'm great at talking. I love bantering with people, talking with people. I do it all day long. And so I was like, this shouldn't be an issue, right? And then you get hit by a wall because you're like, wow, it's actually not about running your mouth, talking to people and trying to convince them. It's about listening.
Yes, 100%.
The whole thing is listening. It needs to be 90% listening, 10% responding to people. Listening is how you get people to share what their struggles are, what their hardships are. And that, and only then can you actually address, the root of their issue. So, I mean, if you're someone who's very confident and outgoing, that's excellent. That's going to put you in a good position, but that doesn't mean you can do this on your own. You need, that support to teach you the frameworks and actually basically controlling yourself is what I needed to learn in order to be successful on calls.
100%. Completely agree. And also like to the introvert that's watching this, you just because we're able to talk a lot, like we're super extroverted, or it doesn't mean that's a necessary skill to get into sales. There's plenty of people who are very introverted and get into sales, and they do even better than the people who are super outgoing.
Hmm.
So anybody can do sales. It's like riding a bike. It's like it doesn't matter if you're fat as shit or skinny, all body types, you're going to be able to ride a bike as long as you learn how. So,
Right.
but yeah, before I cut you off about the whole like what your advice would be to a complete beginner, what would you say to them like when they're debating between like making this work on their own, and like choosing a mentorship?
Yeah, one of the things that, I would recommend is you need to be very clear on your why for wanting a mentor. For me personally, I knew, I wanted to pursue sales and I knew that I had a knack for it, but it wasn't a refined skill set. And so, why I wanted to work with Sean was because the way he came across in his YouTube videos was like the total opposite of what gurus and other like course sellers and people try and push, where it's very high pressure sales tactics they try and use. Sean's whole focus was on problem solving and really identifying the issues of prospects and having a genuine conversation with them and trying to gear them towards a solution that could actually resolve those pain points. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not about hey, you should buy this today and now, and creating fake scarcity and things like that. Having Sean as a mentor allowed me to work through those things that I wouldn't have experienced before, and he also has been able to hold me accountable. The truth of the matter is that if I didn't have Sean, maybe I could have gotten to 15K cash collected in my first week, but it would have been like a year and a half from now or 2 years from now. The difference with him is that he's kept me accountable, and over the last 3 months, I've dedicated every day to practicing, going over sales scripts, reviewing calls with him, and he checks in on me all the time saying, hey, how's the practice going? Hey, you haven't sent me this voice memo. Like, come on, pick up the pace, stick with the plan. And by doing that and putting the reps in, he's been able to hold me accountable and actually have seen my progress in real time.
100%. And to the person who's watching this, like, um, I think Riz also, I mentioned this earlier as well, but a program, like when you purchase a mentorship, when you purchase a course, whatever, it's like that's not the work. The work is in actually executing. Like, for example, I tell Riz to do a role play, or I tell him to do this specific thing in his script when he's reading it. You have to actually do it. That's where the actual work is. And if you're not willing to do that, then like it's not even just like a mentorship isn't for you. Business isn't for you either. You know? So I guess
That's
to
true.
basically, so to basically sum things up, it's like, what would you say are the like I guess like the top two like main things you've learned from this whole sales training? And yeah,
Top two things, takeaways, I think, are don't overcomplicate it. I, am someone who wanted to overcomplicate it to make myself feel better. Um, there's kind of like the joke, or it's like the meme template on Twitter where it's like an IQ curve, bell curve, and it's like a really stupid person who thinks they don't need to do anything, and then in the middle is like someone who thinks they're really intelligent but turns out in the middle, and the really high achievers, like the person who's really dumb, also thinks they're stupid. I was basically wanting to create frameworks and stuff for myself to make me feel better and feel smarter and feel more prepared. It was all bullshit. You don't need that stuff. You just need a good offer to be clear and basically know how to ask good questions and communicate well with the prospect. Keep it simple. That's the biggest thing. Don't overthink. Relax. I was the type of person who would do, how do I respond to this exact thing? Just learn how to have good conversation, ask good questions, be likable, be approachable. That was one of my big takeaways. Second takeaway is kind of what we've been talking about is being coachable. Um, I think that's a skill set in itself. It's very easy to get advice but not act on it, get advice but think, that's not important. You get advice but, twist it and do it a different way. The truth of the matter is you are getting coaching because, your coach, your mentor is in a position that you're not in, right? There's a clear gap there. So clearly they know something I don't. So maybe I should just shut up and listen to what I'm being told and, wait for results to come. And if there's not, then tweak, right? But from the beginning, you need to be implementing the things and be coachable and be ready to just learn and absorb and soak up knowledge.
100%. So you heard it. If you like what you hear and everything, and you think this is for you, sign up for a free call below. If not, then no worries. Thank you, Rizwan.
Thank you, man.